back everyone, I'm James the Tie Guy, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of the newest sets to be released from Hasbro for the upcoming Solo movie. This is Enfys Nest along with her Swoop bike. It retails for $19.99 and it is available right now both online and in retail stores. You get the bike, the figure, as well as one accessory, which is her blade staff. Overall, I was impressed with the figure and the bike. It's a simple design, but I think that it adds to the coolness of the character. Her figure is actually well done. It's got some nice details on it, which I'm going to go over. And then the bike itself, like I was saying, it's simple. Doesn't have any features that are electronic or any moving parts, but it is Force Link 2.0 compatible along with the figure as well. So it does have sounds associated with that. I have the gauntlet to test, but Hasbro hasn't updated the app as of right now, so it only works with older figures and one of the new figures, which is Han Solo. Once that update is released, I plan to do another video to finish my review of the gauntlet, so make sure you watch for that, and plan on testing all of the figures and vehicles I have that are compatible with it. So if we go on to the set itself, we'll take a look at her first. And it is interesting that the character is actually a she, but when you get to looking at a lot of the pictures of her promotional materials released, it becomes more apparent, and I actually don't have any problem with it. I think it's a neat concept, especially she's the leader of what is called the Cloud Gang. They all ride these modified swoop bikes, and they're basically considered pirates. They all have a Mandalorian look, and that translates over to this figure as well. It's like primitive mixed with some new tech, and I actually like that. Something that jumped out at me was her soft goods cape. It's not something that you see much nowadays from Hasbro outside of the vintage line, vintage collection line, or the Black Series. But it is nice that she's got it, and it even has details under it of her clothes, just basically what you would expect. Her leg looks like some sculpt here of maybe a knife or some other weapon that she might carry there. Her necklace slash chest plate here, it's got all these little details, little pieces of rubber to simulate what I'm going to assume is bone. So that's nicely done there. Got her hair here, and then the fur that goes around her collar and neck. All this here is flexible rubber. Her head rotates 180 degrees with no problem, and her hair goes along with it, and it still looks realistic whenever you move it like that. This piece, it's not removable, but it is flexible. If we take her blade here, it fits into her hand, and once you get it in there correctly, it actually is fairly secure. Allows for different manipulation for posing. I'll set that right here. She's actually a 7 POA figure, 7 points of articulation. She's got her head, leg, both legs of course, arms, so that's 5, and then her wrists. Actually, it's really her whole forearm. Rotate 360 degrees, and this is basically so that she can ride her bike easily, holding onto the handlebars, which is nice because in the Solo land speeder review I did, his arms actually aren't long enough to reach the steering wheel in the land speeder, so it's a little unrealistic. But I'll show you in a moment. If you pose her on the back, it looks completely realistic because, if you can see here, she's almost made for that pose. But because of her arm flexibility, holding her staff in various positions isn't a problem. So that was something that I like to see. Before I would put her on the bike, we'll set her aside, take a look at the bike. Not a whole lot of overall detail is good on it, but there's not much to show just because it's a simple vehicle, and it's supposed to be. It's basically the back of the box describes them as little more than engines with a seat. So they're extremely fast, extremely dangerous, and they're called Cloud Riders, so I'm thinking that it probably can use its repulsors to get off the ground fairly fairly good amount, and that's why it has these wing airplane like tail rudder here, and then these on the front are slightly separated. They don't move on the actual toy, but I'm sure in the movie they do in order to give it some sort of steering and stability at high speeds. The engines, you've got 3 of those. The engine block here, which the seat literally is basically strapped to, so I can't wait to see this in action in the movie, because it's probably going to sound awesome and absolutely be extremely fast. Hasbro actually came out with a Swoop bike back in the 90s. I've got one of them. It's still in the box. It was actually Kenner back then, and it's was called a Swoop instead of a speeder. One of the big differences between those, I think, is a Swoop is just generally a more faster vehicle. Got the writing here on the side, place for her feet to go, and then this little turret here, which I'm going to assume is maybe a laser, a light blaster. That's the only weapon I could find on it, or anything that resembles a weapon. Front here is just some pieces of plastic, but they're sturdy enough to where I wouldn't worry about breaking it unless you put a whole lot of pressure on it. And there's nothing to actually hold her into the seat, but I'll show you here in a moment. It's actually fairly stable once you get her in there. So if you basically just take her and tuck her cape under her, which is the best way I've found to seat her, and then her arms, if you just rotate them, and her hands are in the position. They don't have a trigger finger since she doesn't have a traditional blaster weapon, so there's really no problem in getting them to go on here. I found that her left foot, for whatever reason, would reach the pedals better than the right one. If you hold them in that position for a while, it'll usually stay there. And then the speeder, it doesn't have a whole lot to set on, but you can set it down, and really it doesn't require much effort, and it will stay in that position. I did try setting it on top of my monitor because I liked how it looked up there, and I gave it a little bit of adhesive on the bottom with a glue dot that's removable, and it kept falling, so I finally set it on top of my computer tower, and it seemed to do a good job of staying there. I'll just go ahead and give you a 360 view here. Looks really good riding it. The cape, you know, I'm sure you could do something with it to give it the illusion of being windswept, but it reminds me of a modern day chopper that you might see right now being ridden by members of a biker gang, which is essentially what she is, but she's their leader, I believe. So it just has a cool factor to it. I'm really excited to see him in the movie zipping around. And what I'm going to do for comparison here is I have a bark speeder from the Clone Wars era. See if we can get the focus on that a little bit better. Just for size comparison, they're about the same, although to give it even more of the chopper effect, I guess you could call it, she sits further back on her bike than the Clone Trooper does. And even though she doesn't have the articulation that Hasbro gave the Clone Trooper back when this was made, she still looks perfect riding it, actually even more so than the Trooper, which I'm sure you could get him to look better than he does now. I just have him displayed, but just you know, for the easy time that I had to put her on there, I was, you know, glad to see that she looks like she was made for it, which I'm guessing she was, but she also has the ability to function just as a regular figure when she's off of it. So go ahead and set this aside. My overall thoughts on it is that it's a nice set. There's not a lot in the box really, just because it's such a small vehicle, but for $19.99 I have no problem with that, considering the figures themselves are usually $8. It displays well. It's got some nice details on it, It could be made even better with someone who likes to customize their own vehicles with some weathering effects and maybe a black wash on it. But like I said, I have no problem with its price point, and I'm anxious to see the sound that the Gauntlet has for it, because I'm hoping that the sound designers did a good job with it like they usually do with these speeders and ships that are designed to resemble a hot rod or something of that nature in our world here. If you have any questions about it, let me know down in the comments or on my channel's Facebook page. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. That will help me out tremendously. Stay tuned for the next review, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and may the force be with you.